Hey, good afternoon. This is Mark Hundley, and this is Live at 5 on a Saturday. It's kind of a special edition Live at 5 because I typically don't do Live at 5 sessions on Saturday. And the main reason I'm doing one today is because there are three types of people who find difficulty being real when all is said and done. And I wanted to get this out today. You may not catch this live, and that's fine. And you may catch it later today, tomorrow, or next week, and that's fine. That's not a problem at all. But I just wanted to kind of create a sense of continuity so that we could talk about these three types of people for whom becoming real is difficult. So this is a special Saturday edition. During his conversation with the Velveteen Rabbit concerning the nature of becoming real, the old and wise Skin Horse shared a third type of person for whom becoming real is a difficult proposition. What kind of person might that be? Well, I've already analyzed the first two types mentioned by this shaggy sage. People who break easily and people who have sharp edges. Today, I tackled the third type, not likely to arrive at the destination of Realsville very easily, and that's people who have to be carefully kept. I'm guessing that many of you are already entertaining visions of people who fit this description. People who have to be carefully kept. My, but those folks confound us from time to time. Families have their fair share of people who fit this bill. Schools as well. Then there are those in the corporate world who proudly carry the banner of the carefully kept. Politics certainly harbors many of those whose egos who demand fealty whether they've earned it or not. Celebrities of all kinds often find themselves in this boat too. Heck, people who have to be carefully kept seem to emerge from every social circle in which we move. This malady is almost epidemic. I might say pandemic, but it's not quite that bad. People who have to be carefully kept may generally be identified as people who fly off the handle frequently. That might be a new take on frequent flyers. Blow up often, run off at the mouth routinely, wear their feelings on their sleeves, demand acquiescence from others, change their minds on a whim, feign hurt at the smallest slight, throw tantrums when they do not get their way, pitch pity parties at every opportunity, sulk and moan when things don't go their way. They demean others whenever possible. They deflect criticism, even when that criticism is constructive or deserved. And they also blame others for their own personal mistakes. Wow. The list could go on probably ad infinitum, but suffice to say that people who have to be carefully kept cause those who would be real a great deal of difficulty. We often find ourselves mincing our words or walking on eggshells just to keep the peace and avoid an unwanted or unmerited tirade from those people who have to be carefully kept. Whenever we give in to these emotional bullies, we actually sacrifice our own personal realness. We forget the freedom that realness brings. We settle for a tenuous peace at the expense of the security of honesty. Truth pales in the face of these emotional demagogues. What's a person to do? That's a big question. This might appear a bit simplistic, what I'm about to say. However, I believe that it bears consideration. The simple answer to this whole issue is to speak and live truth in the face of the presence of people who have to be carefully kept. The Hopi people and Native American people say that truth does not happen. It just is. Further, the Hopi say it does not require many words to speak the truth. We will never be able to convince or coerce or cajole people who have to be carefully kept to relinquish their need to be coddled. That's not going to happen. There are many times in life when we will find ourselves in the presence of people who have to be carefully kept. It's just going to be that way. When that happens, we often find ourselves engaged in some sort of conversation. Those are good ones, aren't they? And very often we are tempted to engage in an unnecessary war of words. We really do want to avoid that. Well, how then are we to behave in such situations? What's the answer? I believe that the answer lies in our ability to speak and live truthfully in hopes of wielding a little positive influence along the way. And how do we do that? Well, we speak and live truthfully in the presence of people who have to be carefully kept. How do we do this? Let me share a few suggestions for consideration. First of all, we have to commit to ourselves and to others to live truthfully. In other words, let truth lead what we are, who we are, what we say, and what we believe. We have to be authentic. We have to let what's on the inside, our thoughts and our feelings and our perceptions, match our outside, our words and our actions. So we have to focus on being authentic. We have to focus on collecting our thoughts. I know in the middle of talking with a person who has to be carefully kept, my brain kind of explodes. My mind goes all over the place. And I have to pause and collect my thoughts. I have to focus on what are the things that really are important in the particular situation I find myself. I have to pace myself. Sometimes when I get into a conversation with a person who has to be carefully kept, I feel as if we're in a race to the finish, a race to the truth, a race to say the last word or to have the last word. Really, who needs the last word? It's not necessary. So why rush through this whole process? I need to pace myself. I need to check perspective. Sometimes it really does help when I'm dealing with a person who has to be carefully kept to do the best I can to slip inside their skin, slip inside their brain, and see if it's even possible for me to understand and see their perspective. I don't have to agree with that, but if I can see where they're coming from and understand the reason behind their illogic, that can help me to be a better person and do something different. I need to avoid shutdown words. What are those shutdown words? Well, they're emotionally charged words or phrases that have something like, well, you should, or you always. Generally, any phrase that starts with you is one of those shutdown words. It's going to create negative responses. I have to keep my conversations brief. I don't have to go on and on and on. Just keep it brief. I have to focus on the issue rather than the person, and that's hard. We often say, well, you don't care, you don't love, you don't get, you don't see. What would happen if we were to shift that and say, when this happens, I feel. When that happens, I see or I wonder. It takes the focus off the person and back on the issue itself. Finally, we have to avoid the trap of multiple issues. Guys, we can only handle one issue at a time, and you may have 10 or 12 with that person who has to be carefully kept, but keep it to one. And if you can avoid doing any of those, that's great. But if you have an issue that you need to address, keep it to one issue. Rest assured you're going to have an opportunity to handle other issues down the road. All of these suggestions find their genesis in healthy self-care. Truth is easier to speak and live when we practice this wonderful life skill. You see, people who have to be carefully kept have yet to learn the art of healthy self-care. When healthy self-care is in the driver's seat, we are better able to absorb life's challenges with dignity, respect, and courage because we have learned to speak and live truth. The challenge is this. Next time you're in the presence of one who has to be carefully kept, set an intention to live and speak truth in a quiet and respectful manner. You might just find yourself leading one who has to be carefully kept down the path to real. We finished the three people who find it very difficult to become real. And I wanted to do that on a Saturday. I thank you for joining me on this Saturday. I hope that you'll have a good rest of the Saturday evening, a good Sunday tomorrow. Rest, take care of yourself, be gracious and generous to yourself. Go outside if you can, take a walk, give someone maybe a virtual hug. But enjoy the weekend. Come see me on Monday afternoon at 5, and I look forward to that. Peace.